Okay. This is my X-68 Stormtrooper. That's what we're calling it. So we have a 2 times 12 gram Umarex external CO2 cylinder. And for testing purposes today, I have one empty in there and one full unpunctured CO2, 12 gram CO2. I designed and built this CO2 heater that is powered off of Li-ion battery pack. Let me go ahead and turn this on. Okay, I have 2 LEDs. The green LED is power, and the red LED is heat active. And I have the power running through thermal switch. Doesn't look that pretty right now. This is just a prototype. So it's going through a 40 degrees Celsius thermal switch, normally closed. At 40 degrees Celsius, when the internal temperature of that switch reaches 40 or 104 degrees Fahrenheit, then the switch will open, disconnecting the heating circuit. I have 2 heating elements on here, 12 volt, that are powered from the Li-ion battery pack. There's a 4 amp fuse inside that control box, in case anything goes to short out. And again, we have a heating light and a power light. Power light lets me know there's 12 volts coming in through the fuse, through the switch, and available. The heating red light tells me that the thermal switch is closed and providing 12 volts, approximately between 10 and 12 volts, to the 2 heating coils. Takes about 10 minutes or so if it's completely room temperature, like it's 70 degrees. Takes about 10 minutes for it to get up to about 104 degrees. And then it cycles open the circuit for about 3 minutes while it cools, and then it turns back on again, and it'll keep cycling that way. Internal temperature that I was getting with a meat thermometer earlier was about 105 degrees internal. We'll be testing this today with 1 CO2 in there and 1 already punctured CO2 to see what we have for pressure increase, if anything at all. The aluminum 2 times 12 gram Umarex cylinder acts like a heat sink. So all the temperature from the electrical, the heating elements are actually going right through the aluminum and acting like a heat sink. All right now. Okay, so down the end right now, we got about 90 degrees. The thermal sensor, a thermal switch, sitting at about 113. Now that's external. Internally, it trips off at 104 or 40 degrees Celsius. It's hard for me to get a good reading on that, on what's going on internally. But you can see right at the terminals of the thermal switch, they're about 94, 93 degrees. Over here, we're about at, oh, I don't know if you can see that or not. Okay, so closer to the valve here, we're at about, if I can hold it steady, we're about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Down this end, about 93, 94, I'm climbing. Again, internally, with the cap off. I was able to get a thermometer in there, and it was reading about 105. So with the cap closed, I imagine it's going to read even higher. With any luck, the thermal switch will open up before things get too toasty in there, which is also what I'm testing today. I may have to go with a smaller thermal switch, something maybe 35 Celsius. We'll see. And we'll see what kind of pressures I get as well. I'm not really looking for 1500. I'd be happy if I could get somewhere north of 900 PSI from warming the CO2. Ideally, maybe 1000 or 1100 PSI. Usually takes about 10 minutes or so for it to cycle, and then the heater will cycle, or the thermal switch will open, and the heater will kick off for about 3 to 4 minutes, and then it'll cycle closed again and start heating again. We're up around, well, it's hard to hold this thing steady. When it kicks on and off, you'll hear a slight clicking sound. Not sure if that'll show up on the video, but I will definitely hear it. Okay, over here we're about, try this again here, we're about 87 or so. I mean, we're probably warm enough in there right now where I can go ahead and puncture it and see what happens. We'll take it downstairs to the basement and we'll give it a try. We'll keep it going. We'll see what happens here. Don't want to do it in the office, so let's do it where it's, if anything goes crazy, I'd rather do it down there. So, all right, I'll pause this video. We'll take up in the basement. All right. Testing the X-68 Stormtrooper. My X-68 with a CO2 heater that I designed and built. This is the prototype. Has 2 LEDs on it. The green LED is the power, 12-volt power, and ready LED. And the red LED that is illuminated as well is the heater active LED. That receives its 12 volts when the thermal switch, 40 degrees Celsius, thermal switch is closed. It's a normally closed thermal switch, allowing 12 volts to go through. Then feeds in the control box, 4 amp fuse, and then the switch, and then the 2 heating elements that are thermally coupled to the Umarex 2 times 12 gram CO2 chamber, which is aluminum, which acts as a heat sink so that the heat will be drawn in internally to the CO2 and warm the CO2. It is about 60 degrees down here. Right now I've had this running for about 6-7 minutes, and we have a temperature of 101 external right here. The thermal switch should open the circuit to prevent overheating. Currently the thermal switch internally is showing about 92 degrees. Once it gets to 104 Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius, that should open, and the red LED will go out. Previous testing took about 3 to 4 minutes cool down time, and then the heating circuit reactivated again when the thermal switch closed, red heating light kicked back on. So she's cycled. It's powered by a lithium-ion battery pack right here. And DC's run over to the into the the control box first, the fuse, as I mentioned, the switch, and then through the thermal switch, the 40 degrees Celsius thermal switch at the top. Okay, so I'm going to test and see if we gain any additional pressure by warming the CO2. There's 2 CO2 cartridges in here now that are unpunctured, and there's one in the handle. I'm going to pre-puncture the handle first just to take up the volume in the gun in the car stock. This way I don't lose pressure when I activate the 2 in here that are preheated. Again, let me take a reading. I got about 90 degrees right here. It's warm to the touch. We got about 102 over here. And it's still heating. So once it completes the first heat cycle, then I'll go ahead and I'll pressurize this. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and pressurize the handle CO2. This way it'll fill everything, backfill everything. Okay. Right, we already got a pressure. I haven't pressurized the other cylinder yet. Okay, so we got a back pressure of 600 psi. That's just from the CO2 in the handle. I have not yet punctured the 2 in the Umarex cylinder. Okay, so that first CO2 was just to take up the volume. The one in the handle was just to take up the volume in here so that I didn't have a loss of pressure when I do activate these 2 by the volume. The bolt is actually, it's been set, and the car stock expansion chamber, which is reduced by maybe a little better than 50% reduced, but all that volume is being taken up now. We're still charging, or heating, I should say. We're still heating. X-68 Stormtrooper. That's what I'm calling this project here, this prototype. All right, let's see what we have now. I'm going to put it down so I can take some measurements. That's good and hot. I think I'm going to go ahead and puncture this. I got about 95. About 90 over here. I must have some leakage coming in because this is popped out and I have not punctured that yet. So I think I'll get some backflow leakage going through into this. So I'm going to try to puncture this and see what pressure we have. Let's see what we come up with. It's the first time doing it this way, so for safeties, I'm going to kill the heating. And let's see. Up to 700. If I can get this thing to puncture. Six, 7. All right. I think I punctured it, so I'm going to release some pressure. Start turning it in. Turn the heater back on. Let the additional pressure in. So right now we have about 700. All right. Again, not knowing the accuracy of this gauge, but we have 6, 7, 800. 800 on the gauge now. 800 psi, 60 degrees down here. We're still heating. That's 3 times 12 gram, 1 in the handle, 2 in the Umarex that's been heated up with the CO2 heater. Let's see what our temperatures are. External temperature is about 89 degrees here. The thermal switch is still on, still closed. About 92 up here. I don't know if I got a really good puncture on that because it was back pressure coming through from the handle CO2. But we'll see after I'm done testing this. We'll shoot off these rounds and we'll chrono them, see what we have. But this is the most pressure I've shot this gun at for CO2. 800 psi on this gauge. We'll put our first clip. For purpose of testing, we're using the 9.9 gram Riot balls. 6 rounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 Riot balls are in here. And see what we get. First shot. "444 feet per second. First shot. Still sitting at 6, 7, 8. So sitting at 800 psi. Shot number 2. 440 psi. Excuse me, feet per second. Shot number 3. 424 feet per second. Shot number 4. 412 feet per second. Shot number 5. 400 feet per second. Should be the last one, shot number 6. 392 feet per second. It's the first clip. We're sitting at 700 psi after the first clip. It's still heating. When I tested it upstairs in the office, it was much warmer, and I was able to see the cycle through, off, and then back on again. I have not seen that yet, probably because it's, probably a good 12 degrees cooler down here. And I may have to beef up the, I don't know. There's two heating elements on there. I might need more. I don't know. But again, this is a prototype. We're just testing her out. Doesn't look that attractive right now. There's wires hanging out everywhere, but just doing a little experimentation. Again, calling this baby the X-68 Stormtrooper for obvious reasons. Right? Obvious reasons. looks like a Stormtrooper blaster. Anyways, or pretty close to it. All right, here's our second magazine of 9.9 Riot balls, and we are still holding at 700 psi. Let me take a temperature reading really quick. We're still heating. Showing 98 degrees right here. Hot to the touch, 98, but the thermal switch has not opened yet. Thermal switch, I don't think this thing's gonna open. All right, but it doesn't look like it really needs to. We got about 92, 93 degrees right here. We got, what did I say it was? About 98, I guess, up here. All right, so let's get the chrono on these second magazine. Shot 7, second magazine. 398. Going for shot 2. 376. Shot 3. 358. Shot 4. 342. Shot 5. 332. Shot 6. 312. Oh. Put the chrono down. Drop the mag. All right. Gonna have to reload, see if we can get a third mag off. Let me check the temperature. Again, we're still heating. Thermal switch is showing it's hot. Showing about 120 degrees outside on the outside of that thermal switch. But it hasn't reached that internally, or else the heating light would be out, like I've seen in previous tests. Yeah, we're not close to tripping that switch. Again, it's much cooler down here, so there's no risk. The thermal switch was mostly put in there just to prevent any overheating. However, I figured it would also provide an automatic means of it opening and closing the circuit. Yeah, we're still about 96 over there. We're 96 back here. She's warm. She's warm. Still heating. Got the red LED still showing we're heating. PSI right now has dropped to about 500. I should be able to get another clip off. Let me see if I can load one up while this is heating. See if we can get 6 of these rounds here. 4, 5, 6, 7. There's the other one here. All right, so far pretty good. Should be able to get 3 mags. The idea was I was hoping to gain at least 100 psi, and I think I did, because in previous tests down here, the best I could get out of all 3 CO2s together was about 700 psi. Today I achieved 100 psi greater than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's using the base point that I was given through using this gauge. Again, this gauge is probably not the most accurate gauge. You know, I know that, at least I suspect that, but it provides a good baseline for me, since that's all I've been testing with, is using that gauge. Most I've ever seen was 700 psi with 12 grams. Today, after I punctured the preheated 12 grams that were in the Umarex cylinder, I was able to go from 700, and I got a boost to 800. Now, what that is really, realistically, I don't know, but it's 100 psi more than I had. So, on any other time that I've shot this, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, 6 more rounds. 6 more rounds of the 9.9 Riot ball. And that'll probably complete the gas, I would think. So again, we're at about 500 psi. Let's see what we get for numbers out of the last magazine here. 304. Shot 1. Shot 2. 278. They're pretty weak now. Shot 3. 258. Shot 4. 226. Shot 5. 198. I may not even get this last one. Shot 6, let's see. Yeah. Nothing on the trigger there. All right, so I got a lot more power with that extra 100 psi on the front end, a lot more. What the first shot I got, the hot shot, was 444 feet per second using the 9.9 gram Riot ball. I do believe that's the highest shot of feet per second that I've seen on this Pistelli. So definitely got an definitely there was benefit in preheating using this preheater. Yeah, so all right, we got CI63. It's about 250 to 300 psi left in here. I'm gonna go ahead and degas because I know I'm not gonna get any more out of this. Actually, I got some pressure on the trigger right now, but let's just fire off one more for shits and giggles, I guess, huh? Let's see, because I think I got one left. Nope. Whatever tension was on that trigger, I lost it. So I'm gonna degas. Gonna kill the heater. Turn the switch off. Shut the heater down. And let's degas. Okay, I know from experience with degassing this setup, if I don't hold this, drop this, and basically drop the cartridge out of here and keep this wide open, I'm gonna keep building CO2 enough where it's gonna stay pressurized. So I'm gonna leave that out to make sure while I degas the chamber here. All right. Shut the laser off. Let's close that up. All right, completely degassed. That's 0. The quick puncture button is dropped. Still pretty warm. All right, so all pressure's been released. And take a look at these CO2s because I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't get a real good puncture on these because I had all that back pressure, but I'm going to take a look at it now. We'll take a look at it and see. Let's see what we have. All cartridges have been removed. Drop the clip. Oh, I had one Riot ball that I didn't get off. That I didn't shoot. Otherwise, I would have had all 18 shots. So we got 17. We lost one less shot, but a lot more power, especially in that first clip. Okay. I do believe. Yep. Okay. So I got two punctures. Good. One of these was the handle. I got this one here. I can't tell if that was punctured. Really, really tough to tell. So this could have been even. I don't believe that's punctured. If it is, it's very, very small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this back in the handle, and I'm going to puncture it again in the handle only, and see if I get anything. The heater is off. Its switch has been switched off. There's nothing in the Umarex 2x12. However, it is closed. This is closed. Yeah, I can even feel some weight difference. I don't think this one punctured. So if that's the case, I'm going to have to run this test again. Not tonight, but I'm going to have to run this test again with the preheated CO2. I may have to rethink this. I think what I may end up doing is puncture this first, but not open, not close the valve over here, just like puncture it. And then, which is how I did it the last couple tests ago, test number 6, the final test that I did on the 36 gram 3x12 testing that I did. I had punctured these first, but didn't close this, and then I punctured the handle one. So I'm going to give that a try, but right now, just to test this out, I'm going to see if we got anything in this thing. I think we do. Should find out pretty quick. And then I'll have to run this test all over again, because obviously I thought I was getting awesome numbers from 3 CO2 cartridges, when in reality I'm starting to think all I had was one in here and the handle. So let me verify that right now. Yes, okay. I don't know if the camera could hear that, but I just pressurized again. You can see we're back at about 600 psi, which is about what I've been getting with only one CO2 in here on this gauge. Okay, this gauge being my baseline. So I get 600. So that test that I just ran with preheated CO2, I was only able to puncture one of the two in here. There was way too much back pressure going on, I guess, bleeding through and even making it through this valve. So I'll have to repeat the test. I'll probably repeat it maybe tomorrow, the day after or something. And what I'll do is I'll pre-puncture the preheated cartridges first on the quick puncture, and then I'll go ahead and puncture this one to allow this to fill this up, and then I'll close the valve here and allow the preheated gas to come in. So I'm not going to shoot anymore. It's getting late, so I'm just going to waste this gas. But I did, in fact, only have one in the handle and one in here for that testing. So I still saw really good numbers in that first clip. Came up short of doing 3 mags by one round. Clearly, I could have done much better had I had all 3 of these punctured. So. Yeah. So, lessons learned on that. Lessons learned. She's punctured now. Yes, indeed. Yeah, she's punctured now. All right, let me just make sure. I don't think I got anything in here. Nah. Well, it's funny. This does not, when this is off, it still allows, there's still air coming up in here. I guess there's still some air that gets in here. So, but I think I got to do it in that order. I got to pre-puncture this, the Umarex first, and then the handle. It's a little tricky with this setup, I'll tell you that. All right, looks like everything's degassed now. I mean, I know for sure because, again, this is down. So, all right, so we'll do some more testing with this prototype. And I don't know. Even with just the 12 grams and not having all 3, I did gain 100 psi by having that preheated 12 gram up in here. So, I mean, that's not a small thing, I think. I think that's good. I think that's a good test. So we'll see how the next test goes. Thank you for watching. Okay, back upstairs in the office after a semi-successful test of the X-68 Stormtrooper prototype, test 1. The test results did the numbers on the feet per second that I captured during the test results here. And before we go over that, actually, I do want to mention that it was somewhat of a failure. I'll have to repeat the testing when I can ensure all 3 12 grams punctured. As it turns out, because I punctured the one on the handle first, it looks like it was back-feeding pressure even through the Umarex cylinder there, 2 times 12 gram cylinder. It was back-feeding pressure through there, even though I didn't have the, even though I had the valve in the open position. It was still leaking through and back pressuring somehow, resulting in me having to try to puncture the 2 times 12 gram under pressure. I believe that's probably why I wasn't able to successfully puncture both, given that I didn't really want to slap the gun that hard. I was successful the other day in puncturing it, but I had punctured that first, and then I punctured the one in the handle last. So the next test, I'll have to do that to ensure all 3 12 grams are actually punctured. But overall, it wasn't a bad first test. I did see 100 psi gain that I wasn't seeing before. Again, not knowing the accuracy of my meter is, but it's the only meter the only gauge, I should say, not meter, but the only gauge that I've been using. So it's provided a baseline for me. The most I ever saw was 700 psi in all my other tests, like when I was doing the other series of tests, 6 tests that I did with the 36 gram setup, 3 times 12 gram setup. Tonight, I gained 100 psi, and that was with only 2 CO2s. If all 3 had punctured, maybe I would have been at 900, maybe higher. So preheating the CO2 and the Umarex 2 times 12 gram definitely yield some good numbers, good test results. Again, I gained 100 psi. I was at 800 on that gauge. So anyways, the numbers are I'm very excited about the numbers here. For the X-68 Stormtrooper prototype, test 1, using the 9.9 gram Riot balls, which is what I've been testing with, the first shot, or the hot shot, was 444 feet per second, yielding 90.65 joules, which is historic high in joules for me for this setup with a 12-inch barrel. The second shot was 440 feet per second, yielding 89 joules. And then the third was 424, yielding 82.67 joules. And then the fourth was 412 feet per second, yielding 78 joules. 400 feet per second, 73.57 joules. And then 392 feet per second at 70.66 joules. That was the first magazine, or the first 6 rounds of the Riot balls. Mag 2 started off at 398 feet per second, giving me 72.84 joules. Shot number 2 was 376, 65 joules. Shot 3, 358, 342, 332, and 312, giving me 58.93 joules, 53.78, 50.68 joules, and the last shot in magazine number 2 gave me 44.76 joules. Magazine number 3, and again, with this setup, the goal is 3 magazines at least. I started off with 304 feet per second, 42.49 joules. Then it dipped off pretty quick, 278, 35.54 joules, 258 feet per second, 30 joules, or 30 and a half pretty much. 226 feet per second, 23 and a half joules. And the last shot of 17 shots total was 198 feet per second of a super low 18 joules. Test results. Ambient temperature in the basement was about 60 degrees. I was able to get a laser reading with the thermal. So I know it was definitely about 60 degrees there. That was the sheetrock wall was reading 60. The cement walls around were reading anywhere from 50 to 55 degrees, so pretty cold. Was supposed to be 3 times 12 grams in total, 2 in the Umarex 12 gram, and 1 in the handle. 1 did not puncture, which was my own fault. No fault of the CO2 cartridges that were being used, which all 3 were Crossman. I will have to repeat the test and ensure that I pre-puncture the preheated CO2 first and then the handle last, like I did in the previous testing series, and that should yield the desired outcome. Again, 1 did not puncture, and I still saw 100 psi gain, so I would say preheating with this prototype setup that I designed and built here definitely gave me an increase. So that's good. So it was worth the trouble, I think. I will need to repeat the test, ensuring that all 3 cartridges are punctured. Again, key takeaway: I still gained 100 psi. The most I ever saw before in the prior test series, or since I've been firing this gun, has been 700 psi. Came up short in numbers of shots. Usually I get about 18. I got 17. And again, I think that's because, comparing apples to oranges, when I get 18, that's usually with 3 punctured CO2, 12 gram CO2 carts. In this case, I found out at the end of the test, only 2 of the 3 punctured. So that's a good reason why I came up short. Also, I think I would have probably had at least another 100 psi gain. Probably would have been shooting somewhere in the neighborhood of 950, maybe 1,000 psi. So I'm excited, can't wait to rerun this test. But in the meantime, I want to get these numbers out there, and we'll go from there. Anyways, thank you for watching. Hopefully this has been educational, and if not educational, hopefully it's been entertaining at the very least. Thank you. Peace out.